Hi everyone, Richard Logan here at Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain UK. I'm here with Stuart Clarke, Manager of Material Flow and Packaging Engineering at Ford. Stuart, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Stuart, you've just given a fantastic presentation exploring how you're transforming your material flow for new model launches with digital twin technology, immersive capabilities to validate the data, data-driven decision making. Talk us through the initiative, the project. What were you trying to achieve, and what have you learned so far?
So we started many years ago now. I mean, VR is not new in any way, stretch or form. It's been around virtualization in one way or another 30 plus years. So what we learned through journeys of launching vehicles in our plants was that sometimes people aren't able to visualize a 2D layout into a 3D world. So, you know, they look at it on paper and it's like, oh, that's fine, no problem with that. Then you install it and they go, that's not what I thought it was going to look like. So we end up in this world of going back and reworking, and then every time we rework, you're talking tens of thousands of euros if we're working in Europe, or pounds if we're in the UK, to try and fix something that could have been fixed if people had understood what they were looking at the very beginning. So we started down this journey some time ago of how can we fix that, because we could fix it partially with 3D models, that would work, but 3D models only again allow you to look around a screen around it, unless you created physical 3D printed scale versions of what you're trying to do. That becomes unpractical, unwieldy. If you want to take it somewhere, you have to carry all of it. So we looked further down the technology routes, and then we worked into looking at the virtual world and virtual reality. So we started doing some research around different kinds of software, and one of the things that we did find is that a lot of the software that's available on the market within the Ford scope just wasn't suitable because it was just far too complicated for what we were wanting to do. And the original view that we took of this was it was part of the engineer's job who looked after the area in the plant. So one of the things, they always had to do layouts anyway of the area, so we wanted to push on to them to say, right, now you need to create it in 3D. What we have learned since then is that that's not the right way to do it, because it becomes the thing that people just let go of when they get overwhelmed with work. It's making sure that they're not seeing the importance of having these models. So if it comes to they've got too much on their plate, that's the first thing that goes. So we've now looked at, we have someone that's dedicated within our team to producing these models and these layouts, and he interacts completely with the teams, from things like cycle line layouts to understand what the line size is going to look like. He takes that, he creates it in the 3D world. We then go back and do our work stream of, okay, does everything fit? Is there any clash conditions when the operator picks the parts? Things like that. So that's sort of where we came from, and this has been an iterative journey over, probably we're getting in now to probably about 7 or 8 years. But it's really ramped up with pace and vigour in the last 2 to 3 years that we've really got progress. And some of that's been technology's changed. So we're currently in the process of rolling out wireless headsets. So with those headsets, they are self-contained. You don't need any of the boxes on tripods, and even you don't need the controllers on your hands anymore. You can now just pick and place what you want to do like that. So it's continually evolving process as we go through.
Yeah, and talking about that sort of that concept to deployment, talk us through some of the pivotal milestones and where we're going next.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we spoke about in the panel as well was around communication, and I think that's kind of one of the things that we've really learned about here is, if you're going to do something like this, you have to communicate in the right way that you get people on board, because otherwise you don't progress the journey forward. So we've worked through lots of different steps, and you know, it's one of the big decisions that we have to make about all of this is around the value add versus the time you spend doing it. So with VR development, you can spend forever making it look exactly like it does in real life, but we have to look at where's the value add. Yeah. What we need is a representation of the production line in size and spatial awareness sort of thing. It's the right colours. Is it the right texture? Does that really matter? And that's the things that we've learned as we've gone through. So one of the other things that we've tried to work out is how we fit this into our general work streams in the global product development system that Ford have, and what gateways we need what level of information at. And that's still a bit of an ongoing thing as we're working through into the next launch. It's the first time we've used the tool in anger. We've done a lot of trials and tests around it, but this is the first time we're using it as an engineering tool to deliver part of a product launch for us. So we were looking at how we fit those gateways in. What do we need at what stage of the program costing process? And then at what stage do we fine tune it to be able to sign it off for delivery and then physically install around it? So it's a bit of an ongoing process at the moment where we're to some extent finding our feet with it, to other extents we know where we want to be, but we're past that gateway in the program, so we're playing catch up.
Yeah, makes sense. And what are some of the major gains that the MP&L team have experienced through this?
So currently we're as a group staff function within Full, we're driving it, and we're working through now trying to get that into the plants for them to own the layouts when they're built, because plants can change their own layout. We're no notice to us. So what the idea behind it, and one of the gains that we're trying to get out of it, is that when we do a new model costing, we have a up-to-date model of the logistics arena within the plant. Mm-hmm. So instead of us saying we think it's going to be this much to move that much to move that, we can look and say, well, actually the plant looks like this today and we're going to move that to there, and we can then do an accurate cost. And if it's something that's a bit more complicated, we can bring a supplier in that will do the moves. We can put them in the virtual headsets, we can put them into the virtual world, and we say, right, this is what we would like you to cost for. So it takes a lot of the sort of vagueness out of asking suppliers what to do. You know, it's like, no longer is it, can you move that from there to there? It's like, well, actually, if you want to move that from there to there, these are all the things that are in the way of you doing that you're going to have to move or find ways around in the first place. So I think that's one of the major gains is process. Mm-hmm. Within that, we're getting much better at process, much more locked down at knowing exactly what needs to be done rather than estimates on what needs to be done. And I think the other bit we get is time as well, because every time you have to rework something, that adds time and delays into your program. And if you don't get it exactly where you need it to be, by the time one of the interfacing gateways from the vehicle ops manufacturing teams or the powertrain manufacturing teams is required, then you're delaying programs. And when you start delaying programs, they start incurring significant exposures, significant cost into that as well. So I think that's the second thing that we're gaining out of it. And I think the last thing we're gaining as well is that we're gaining the ability to communicate better. Mm. As we spoke about on the stage, you know, we can now stand virtually in one space, but be physically anywhere in the globe on the Ford internet network. And I think that's a massive gain for us, because that's taking away having to travel mm-hmm. to plants to stand in the same room and talk about something that ultimately we can do over the internet now. Yeah. With it. And I think that's one of the huge gains that we get there. And we spoke as well about it helps people's work-life balance. You know, if we're travelling, say we're going down to Valencia, then some of the engineers leaving home at 3:30, 4:30 in the morning to get flights down there to get the most of the time for the week that they're on site. That's not good for your weekend before that you go, because it's always in your mind, and you know on a Sunday you can't be in bed too late. If you've got children, it affects what's happening, and when you come back it's tiring. So you take a couple of days back, whereas if we can do the simple bits that are easy to fix over the internet and standing virtually in the same space, we start helping our employees have a better work-life balance as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Obviously, you know, the technology is one side, but there's still a huge human element to logistics.
Yeah, and I think that's things that you'll never get away from. You know, we can automate plants, and one of the things that we know with our Valencia plant particularly now is it was built in about the 60s. So we still, on the production system, some of the technology is still from the past, as it were. So we're still running on chain conveyors that go across aisleways. Now you can't run most types of guided vehicle over those chains because they'll get stuck. So those are the elements that still require the human inputs into it, and I think we can test things and we can animate things in the virtual world, but there's still a bit where humans need to be involved to be able to do it.
That's a great example there. Talk to me briefly about the ability to scale across kind of numerous plants within Europe as a region, but also then perhaps further afield too.
Yeah, so this is a European-wide work stream that we're pushing forward and leading from the UK into all of the plants. We call them blue oval plants, so the ones that are full badge. So currently it's not in our joint ventures, it's just in our full badge plant that we do. And we're learning as we go along. We're dealing with different cultures is one of the things that we deal with, different ways of working is one of the things that we deal with, and then we've got the technology issues that we deal with as well. So as you'll appreciate in the automotive world, corporate secrets are very important, so IT networks are very locked down. to be able to get external hardware to put on them. So that's a journey that we have to go through in itself. But really where we're looking at the scaling now is we're going through, as I say, updating to the wireless headsets. And the process that we're putting in place now is learn the lessons on one in Dunton, where I'm based, where we're not travelling. The networks are all the same across full globally. So learn the lessons, get one up and running, get it worked, then roll the process out across the UK site, so Dagenham and Halewood. Once we're confident that it's a roll out of process, then we'll move into the European plants and we'll roll them out into the European plants. We'll start with Valencia, as that's our next target for new model costings. Then we'll move over to Cologne and we'll roll it out into Cologne as well. So I think that's really where we've got to look at it. You know, with anything like this, I think you can run too quickly with it, and then you end up chasing your tail, finding all the problems. But if you've rolled it out, you're doing that in 7 different locations. If we get one working, then we're doing it in one location to fault find, which brings you under your process control, and which means that you can get things done much quicker, much easier than you would do if you were trying to fix things in 7 sites with 3 different languages.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Perhaps one final question. This digital journey that you're on, it's not linear. It's not by no means coming to an end. What's the next exciting steps for you in this process?
So I think on this one, it's getting it out and running and working in Europe, and getting the plants brought into it, I think, is the next big gateway for us to get there. Once the plants have adopted the ownership for keeping their layouts up to date, I think that's when we then start looking at what more the technology we can do and what we can use it for. So as we spoke about in the keynote, we use about 10% of what the technology is available for. And in the last few weeks, we've started using a new use case for it, which is relevant to the logistics teams that have been here today, where we're looking at spatial awareness simulation. So if we've got an HGV coming in a dock and we want to change how that dock works, can the HGV still come in and turn out the dock? And that's something new that we've not done before in that respect. And we're using the virtual software for doing that, because we can pick up the clash conditions, but we can also stand and watch the truck, because we've modelled the truck into the VR software, we've modelled the plant into the VR software, so we can stand on the receiving dock and watch what actually happens as if it was happening in real life. And I think that's where it becomes really powerful as a tool. And if you think that that's just one more additional use case that we found by experimentation, how many more are there out there that we're just not aware of at the moment that we'll pick up as we go through, and someone asks a question and says, can you simulate that? And so, okay, let's try with this software. And we'll either yes or no. And it comes again to having the safe environment and a culture to try things in, where people aren't going to complain if it doesn't work, and that we're going to be able to try these things. And that will then increase the scope massively, I feel, of what we'll do with this software and where we'll end up with it. Because I think there's so many interfaces between the logistics world and the manufacturing world that today we ultimately guess at.
Yeah.
Because if they're educated guesses because of experience, but if you lose that experience, then you've got no process and no technology to fall back on to be able to say, okay, that person's left, but we can still do this because there's the process and there's the technology to do it with. So I think that's really where we expand out now. We go Europe, we're partially in use in our International Motors Group down south of the equator, so we're partially in use there. Rolling out into North America, where we've got a lot more plants as well, that's a step that we need to now work on as well. And I think that comes back to getting ourselves running properly in Europe, so it then becomes a showcase of, yep, you can stand in Detroit, you can stand in Windsor, and you can all look at the same virtual thing. So I think that's where we get to is, you know, once we're confident with the technology running and we've rolled out through Europe and we've seen there's no glitches and everything works, we're out across the rest of the world in full, and then we're looking at what's the next use case for the process and the methodology that we want to do. I think we keep away from talking about software specific, but talk about process and what would be a value add thing to be able to see in the virtual world. And that's what I think it comes always back to. What's the value add? It's not a toy. We need to make sure that what we're doing and what we're trying to roll out and any advancement in it always has some value behind it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. Plenty of experience gained, plenty of lessons learned many milestones achieved and ticked off, but many more to come on this exciting journey. So thanks so much for joining us now.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we'll see you very soon.